Just want to talk for a second about our next speaker. Kerry Fraser was trying to figure out his travel arrangements to be here. And actually, I'm going to back it up even a second further. He said, hey, do me a favor, don't Google me when you're looking up for... I immediately Googled him, right? And it was last summer, I found his Twitter account. And so I clicked on it, and here's a guy who, like, one post says, you wrecked my life. You blew that call, right? Someone on his feed is writing that to him or asking his question on a call. Well, his responses were coming live from Rome, Italy. He's like, just prayed before St. Peter's tomb. How awesome is that to have that opportunity? I'm like, I love this guy. He's in a world of sports and people who are just, touching where they're most vulnerable, and he's talking about his faith right out there. And when he's trying to make his travel arrangements, he said this in an email back, I much prefer to remain available for group questions or one-on-one contact until everyone has left the conference. So he's not even going to fly out tonight. That's how important it was for him to be here to the end, to be with you guys, to help encounter Christ. When I spoke with him last night, I got to tell you, you're gonna love this Kerry when he gets up here. Like, there's so much passion. Like, his eyes well with tears when he talks about the relationship he has with God, how blessed he is when God works with him. So I'm going to stop talking about him and let him bring a bit of that faith to our stage. Come on, Kerry Fraser. Kerry, I've been mentioning that Eric Little, the runner from Chariots of Fire. He was working in the camps where these kids were interred as well. And in order to stop them from fighting, you know what he had them do?
No.
Play hockey.
That
stop fighting.
That works, sure.
All right. And he was the official, so it's good to have all these themes running through my day. So good luck. They're yours.
Thanks, Father. Thank you very much. Thank you. Welcome. It is so good to be here. I got to tell you, if I had known Richard Lane when I started officiating, I would have had the NHL hire him as a linesman to follow around with me to warm up the 20,000 people in the crowd before I stepped out. Because he could say to them, there's going to be a referee coming out here, and he's going to be a little guy, but he makes great calls, and when he does, I'm going to get you to move, and you're going to say, with my luck, some fan would say, Fraser sucks, and Richard would say, amen. I actually thought I was going to change my name to Fraser Sucks. We have 7 children. I'm going to introduce you to them in a moment on a DVD that my daughter, Jessica, you're going to hear a lot about Jessica today. She was the middle child girl. We have 7. 6 at the time, 3 boys, 3 girls, second marriage, and we had 2 middle children. Jessica was the middle girl and Matthew was the middle boy. So I had, every time, because I traveled like 150,000 miles every season, and I wanted my kids to know what it is I did. They saw me on TV, and their friends at school thought I was a big deal. We lived in Canada, hockey night in Canada, all that stuff. And I wanted to let them know it was no big deal. Dad just went to work like all dads, and this happened to be how I earned my living. So I took Matthew when he was 5 years old on a special trip to New York. We had a Ranger game, a Devils game, and we finished up with an Islander game, and in between I took him to the Muppets. So on the Islander game, Dennis Potvin was playing. They were winning 4 Stanley Cups, and the crowd started that famous chant towards the end, Fraser sucks. All the people in the crowd. So after the game was over, the attendant I had looking after Matthew, little 5-year-old Matthew, brought him down to the dressing room. As I'm untying my skates, Matthew sat beside me. He said, Dad, did you hear what they were saying about you? I said, oh, don't worry about that, Matthew. I said, they're just mad at the sweater. They're not really mad at Daddy. He said, I know that, Dad, but you don't suck, do you? No respect. You talk about respect. Oh, my goodness. Anyway, I had the blessed career in the NHL. And my daughter, there was a milestone, a new milestone for referees, 1,500 games that I hit, that the league started honoring referees that worked that many games. So my daughter Jessica, the pain in the butt middle child girl you're going to hear about, put together a DVD of family and career highlights. I'm going to show you that in a second, but one of the things, Wayne Gretzky wrote the foreword to the book that I have, and we didn't always get along, Wayne and I. As a matter of fact, in 1980, there was quite a story. I won the battle in a game in 1980 with Wayne in Northlands Coliseum, but it was a moment of reflection for me because I recognized that I had compromised my own integrity. When he kept diving, the more he dove, the less I called, and it wasn't really in the best interest of the game. But Wayne wrote 2 lines here in his foreword that really, for me, hit home, and it gave me a warm feeling. Wayne said that hockey was Kerry's career and passion, but he always kept things in perspective. His book makes clear that his family and faith were and are the most important, enduring things in his life. So that came from our association and the relationship that I established with Wayne over the course of his career on the ice. I saw him pretty much as a rookie and all the way through until he retired, and then I stayed on. Jessica did this DVD. I want to introduce you to my family that I love dearly, and an element of faith, but it's going to take you onto the ice with me in some games. 2 things I want you to listen closely to as I wear a wireless mic on the ice. One is Willie Plett, who was playing for the Minnesota North Stars in a game against the New York Rangers. And the question he asked me was, is this your worst game of the season? That's what he asked me. In a second clip, and you'll hear my response, listen closely. In the second clip, you're going to hear Neil Broughton, again, Minnesota North Stars, leading scorer of All-Americans until Mike Modano passed his record. I had given a penalty to the other team. He was playing for the North Stars. The North Stars were going to be getting a power play, and Neil Broughton had something to say to me, even though they were going on the power play. So listen closely to the responses. Chris, would you like to roll that for us, please? And we'll have a look at my family and some milestone footage. That's me as a baby, my father, baby brother, and I.
Now and forever, you are a part
My mother, Barbara.
and the
1989 Stanley Cup Final, Montreal.
Didn't we find the ecstasy?
Jessica, the little one on the
Didn't
left.
we share the daylight
It's the Fraser clan.
when you walked
My dear wife,
into
Kathy.
my life?
My angel.
Now and forever,
It's our baby Kara, now 23. First grandson, Harrison.
promises still
Son Ian on the right, Jamie.
and think about all
Our oldest daughter, Marcy.
between us that never needed to be spoken. We had a moment
1989 Stanley Cup Final, John McCauley, director of officiating, passed away a month later.
that will last beyond a dream, beyond a lifetime.
My 1,000th game in New York, Madison Square.
Some people never get to do all we got to do. Now and forever, I will always think of you.
Are you getting tired yet?
Are you wired?
Not yet.
Assume the position. Assume the position, buddy. I gotta make sure you're not.
When I finished playing junior hockey in Canada, it was in 1971, and the Flyers and the Bruins were drafting anybody 6 foot plus, and I didn't fall into that category at 5'7.5", so I was a good little player, and my abilities and size restricted me from being a national leaguer. I recognized that, and actually it was Ted Garvin, who coached in the International League and went on to the Detroit Red Wings for a brief period, was a longtime friend of our families, and he recommended that I get into officiating. Can't leave home without it. Never a bad hair day.
I sprayed on my helmet.
Oh, shoot! Just stay out of my way when I'm flying up that ice, buddy. I'll blow you out of here. Ah! I don't wear a helmet either, and I don't want one. I guess they didn't like that second penalty I called.
Very worst game of the season.
No, they're all about this caliber. I can't repeat it. I got the mic on. What the hell do you want?
There was no penalty there.
Oh, he pulled him off the puck.
There was no penalty.
Well, that's fine then. I'll file that. Smart ass.
We don't have to beat it up and play it and replay it. I mean, it was a good effort, and it's over. It's in the can.
All right, discipline. Lady Bing, we've seen that beautiful trophy here. We've got to present an actor who's made a living portraying bad guys and a gentleman whose job it is to put the bad guys away. Would you welcome from the hit ER, Toronto's Michael Ironside, and Sarnia's Kerry, Fraser.
We're here to present the Lady Bing Trophy.
This award goes to the player who combines sportsmanship with a high caliber of play. Michael, I had a thought. If a player disagrees with one of my calls, is that still considered sportsmanship?
Well, that would depend on the quality of your call or non-call. For example, my dad wanted me to ask you, L.A., Toronto, 6th game.
No. Unsportsmanlike conduct, Michael. Unsportsmanlike conduct. Definitely unsportsmanlike conduct.
You're simply the best. Better than all the rest. Better than anyone. Anyone I've ever met. I'm stuck on your heart. I hang on every word you say. Chance to fall. Maybe I would rather be dead. Each time you leave me, I start losing control. You're walking away with my heart and soul. I can feel you even when I'm alone. Oh, baby, you got me
That's good, Chris. Thanks, buddy. So you've seen my family, you saw what I did. The question that the bishop posed to us today was about conversion, mercy, humility. I can talk to you about conversion, certainly mercy. I'm working on humility. You know, today, I want to share with you about the call. Not one I missed, not the 93 call that I missed when Gretzky got Doug Gilmour high stick that Michael Ironside talked about, the actor that turned the series around, and the people in Toronto still hate my guts. I'm not going to talk about that. What I want to talk about is the call from our Lord Jesus Christ that has anybody here, I'm sure everybody here has heard the call. Have you? Raise your hands if you have heard him speak to you, call you, talk to you, draw you, of course. Well, there was a period in my life where I wasn't listening. And you know, we are what we came from. And we have role models. And parenting is so important, especially for men. When we look up to our fathers as we grow, and it's really important that we get the right role model in our life. And there's no school to being a father. You can't really graduate with a degree in fatherhood and being a husband. You hope that you come from a family background of faith. I didn't. And this isn't intended to bash my dad. My dad was really a tough guy. He was a pro hockey player. He was a pro boxer. Great combination. He played minor pro hockey in the International Hockey League, like the old Eastern League, goon stuff, and he was a goon. And so I learned to skate at 15 months old. He would take me to practice with these little skates, and I'd go out before these guys, big ugly guys with no teeth, would come out onto the ice, and that's how I was indoctrinated. I played hockey 3 years for him in AAA Midget. We had 7 guys off our team go on to play in the NHL. We were a family dedicated to hockey, my brother and I. My brother Rick was drafted by the Chicago Blackhawks, 2 years younger than me, and yay for Chicago. And he ended up playing in the World Hockey, and so just the two of us, but we were hockey family. What I learned from my father was a message that I got that I want to share with you that wasn't good. And it was that men are adulterers. And that's a sad fact that I saw when my dad took me on a sailing trip when I was 12 years old, and it was the first time that I saw that guys do that. And that was the message. And he said, you know, he was a little embarrassed, but he said, listen, you know I love your mom. Yeah, I'm sure you do, Dad. But he was my hero. And he taught me how to play the game and fight, but he also taught me these other things that I absorbed that weren't good. So when at 19, I was always a caretaker. I know I had a good heart, and there were times in my life when God called me, because I went to Sunday school when I was 5, but then hockey took over. And I remember being in grade 2, and God called me in the public school when it was okay to pray, morning prayer in the public school system. And I said the word Jesus, and the hair on the back of my neck stood up. I felt this sensation, and I didn't know what it was as a young child in grade 2. But that word, that Jesus, gave me tingles. And I still recall it. One of the things God's blessed me with is recall of not just incident, but emotion. And the hair just stood up as I mentioned his name again. But he was calling and I wasn't listening, and I continued on. In the 7th grade, all I wanted for Christmas was a Bible. I got a Bible for Christmas. What hockey player? Usually my brother and I got a dozen hockey sticks. I wanted a Bible. I still have that Bible. It was inscribed to Kerry from Mom and Dad, love Mom and Dad, Merry Christmas. And I would read it, and it had pictures in it. And again, I was being called, but I wasn't listening. I put the Bible aside as I continued on my hockey playing days. Today, the gospel verse is, if today you hear his voice, harden not your hearts. What a message. What a message for us today as men, having heard the 2 great speakers previously, and what I want to share, which is his mystical call. There are times when he'll whisper to us like a gentle breeze. There are times when he puts people in our path that say something to us that draw us closer to him. And there are times, as in my case, when we don't listen and he has to do something a little more drastic. He has to shake you. So at 19 years old and being a caretaker, and I was dating and engaged to a girl that had an alcoholic mother and addicted to prescription drugs, and I was going to save this girl because that's what I did, and I looked after people, and I had a good heart, and I was married at 19. Instead of taking the hockey scholarship offers that I had to great schools in the U.S. or playing pro hockey when I finished playing junior, I was getting married, and I was no more prepared for marriage. I knew nothing about the sacrament of marriage, and I had no faith. And I was schooled in what men do. They do this, and they say, I can do that because I love my wife. And I'm ashamed of what I became because I immediately, following the honeymoon, went to a referee school, was scouted by the NHL at that school, a 5-day camp. 2 days later, I was at the NHL training camp for officials. I was on my way. They signed me to a contract. They put me in the American Hockey League, and I was a rock star in the officiating world. I couldn't be a player, but man, I was on my way to the NHL. And again, I got some lessons from men that weren't real wholesome messages. I was a rookie. I went to training camp. I saw what they did. They drank. They carried on with women. They were married. They had families, but it didn't matter because they loved their wives. And then I went on the road. And it was only 3 weeks later. and I was involved in a bar with one of my colleagues, and we picked up girls, and that was, you know, where that's going. Felt a little guilty, but the more I did it, the easier it got, because I remembered it's okay as long as you love your wife. Awful, awful existence. But I kept searching and looking, and children came along, 3 boys, and they became my life. But it wasn't right. It didn't feel good. I kept searching for happiness. Where was that happiness I was going to find? I was a wretch. I was miserable. My life was miserable. I was a fraud. I came home and played daddy and husband, but on the road I was searching and looking, and I was a star. I was such a good referee. Everybody told me how great I was, and I could control things. Boy, am I a type A. And that little man syndrome that my father kind of schooled me in as a hockey player when he taught me how to fight and take care of things when I played for him for 3 years, served me well as a player, but as an official, it wasn't great. I became part of the problem as opposed to part of the solution. That tough guy, that get in your face. What we men are supposed to be, we're real men. We're not supposed to show emotion, and we're in control, and if somebody gets in our face, we give it back to them. I knew in my first confrontation with Wayne Gretzky in 1980, when I made it to the NHL, that wasn't going to work for me. I won that little battle with him that night because he kept diving and I kept being more stubborn. And there's only 2 players, actually, in my 30-year NHL career that thanked me for giving them a penalty, and Gretz was one of them on that night. And he said it sarcastically because at the end of the game against the Philadelphia Flyers, they were down by 1 goal with a minute left, and Wayne, the best opportunity was to get a power play, and the goalie for the Flyers, Pelle Lindbergh, caught the puck. I blew the whistle. Standing behind the net with nobody around him was Wayne Gretzky. He jumped in the air. He threw his hands out and his feet out, belly smack on the ice. Bobby Clark skated over to him with no teeth. He said, "Get up, Gretzky, you effing baby." I went over. I said, "Wayne, what are you doing? There was nobody within 10 feet of you." He said, "Well, you wouldn't have called it anyway. You haven't called a friggin' thing all night." I said, "You're right. I'm going to start right now." Bang, you got 2 for unsportsmanlike conduct. He said, "Thanks. It's about effing time you called something," and he stormed off the ice. Now, I'm very analytical, and I reflected on that, and I thought, you know what? I showed him, and then the more I thought about it, the more I recognized that I compromised the game, I compromised the rules, and I compromised my own integrity, and I was trying to find some, and it wasn't right. So along that road, life gave us some twists. We as men with families and the weight of the world wears us down. And there was a situation where there were 3 children, and my wife didn't want any more at the time, and she got pregnant, and we ended up in an awful situation. And I was part to it. I allowed it. And I couldn't take my life as it was, and the separation took place in the divorce. And God brought an angel to me, Kathy, the lady in the picture on the DVD, with her 3 girls and my 3 boys, and we put the Brady Bunch together. Kathy is a cradle Catholic. She had an abusive relationship with an alcoholic husband. She was married at 19 as well. We've brought these 2 families together. There's so much love in our hearts for one another. It was the first time that I ever learned what love was really about. And rather than an annulment, painful annulment process, we were married in Canada in the United Church in a civil marriage ceremony. We relocated to Philadelphia. She dragged us to church on Sunday, the 3 boys and I. The 3 girls received communion. Kathy didn't. She cried. Tears rolled down her cheeks every time that the girls went up to receive communion. I didn't know what the big deal was. I didn't get it. It's just a wafer. I don't understand why she's so upset. And as turns and twists took place in our lives in bringing these two families together, and battles with the NHL during a strike, and Gary Bettman and I went at it publicly, and all that weight that we can feel as men kept weighing me down and down. And it had to escape. And where does it escape, man? It escapes with the ones that we're closest to, the ones we know that love us, we're most secure with. So my family became the catalyst. And it was Jessica, the middle child, who had some residual effects from the abuse, verbal abuse of her natural father that we had to get her help with. But I needed help, and I didn't know it. And as Jessica acted out her bad behavior, and I came in as the referee to take control of it, because I'm a control guy, it created a problem in that family. And I said to my wife after I was heading off to a referee school the summer of 1995, I said, you get some help for this kid, or I don't know if we're going to make it. It had hit that far down. I had hit that low on the pole. So she called. She got, first of all, down in front as I flew off to Calgary, on her knees in front of the little statue that she had as a child of the Blessed Mother. She cried, she pleaded, she prayed. She said, please, Blessed Mother, you're a mother. I love my child. I love my husband. Please help this family. The next call Kathy made was to the NHL Employee Assistance Program, where you can make a confidential call. You were hooked on to somebody in Montreal who listened to what it was that you needed in the family, and they would hook you up with someone in your area to address your specific problem. I came back from Calgary. She said, we have somebody that they're putting us on to just around the corner from our house in Voorhees, New Jersey. His name is David. He's a family counselor and also a marriage counselor. I said, well, we don't need a marriage counselor. We just need somebody to fix this kid, right? So I said, fine, let's try him. The night before we had this appointment, there was a force, gentlemen, that wanted to keep me away from this meeting. I got into a rip-roaring argument, all on my bad, with my wife, Kathy, and I said, I am not going to see that guy tomorrow. You go and you take that kid and you get her straightened out. The next day I went like this, and I sat in the waiting room, closed off, my back turned against my wife. Out came this little meek, mild guy by the name of David. He said, hi, my name's David. I rolled my eyes. I thought, me, the jock, the hockey guy, this guy is going to fix us, going to help us. I went in, and we sat down, and he started to take notes. And he asked us about previous marriage, children from the marriage, this, that, and the other thing. And he said, now let me tell you a little bit about myself. Things just pop into my head, and he said, I don't know where they come from, but I want to prepare you. He said, for example, there was a couple in here not too long ago that were trying to adopt a child, and they had exhausted all North American supply. They had no luck, and it was causing a problem in their marriage. He said, just like you, I took down information. I put the pen down. I said to them, you have nothing to fear. Have your passports in order. You will be asked on such and such a day, and he gave them the date. You will receive a call. You will be asked to go to Russia on such and such a date. While you're there, you will be asked to go to Moscow on a specific date, where you will meet your adoptive children, siblings, 2 of them. When you bring them back to North America, they are very close to the Virgin Mary. You will keep them close to the church when you come bring them back to North America. He said, these 2 people looked at me like I had 2 heads. They immediately got up and walked out, and it was over. Didn't even finish the session. On the day that he told her that they were going to get the call, the lady phoned him. She said, David, I just received a call. He said, I know, just do as you're asked. Each day that he had told them, it came to be. On the day that they were to meet their adoptive children in Moscow, they walked into an orphanage It was a feast day of Our Lady. As they walked into the foyer of the orphanage, there standing at the foot of a statue of the Virgin Mary were these two little children holding hands with a shopping bag of all of their worldly possessions in them. They brought them back to North America, and at the sign of peace in Mass, they walked around and hugged every member of the parish and brought great love and joy to the parish. So this suddenly for me became this, and I opened up. He said some other things that had happened that he shared with us that just continued to open me up. And he handed me and he told me some things about my childhood that he had no way of knowing. He handed me a DVD. He said, listen to this. I went to a place called Medjugorje, and it will explain a little more of what I'm about. I went back home. We made another appointment immediately for the next week. I listened to this DVD or this CD, and I'm sorry, it was a tape back then, cassette, and I thought, this is fascinating. He's talking about things that happened and the people in Apparition Hill and all this stuff that went on, and I was fascinated. I wanted to copy the tape. My wife and the kids were away, and I went into our oldest daughter's bedroom. She had a double-sided tape machine, and I plugged it in, and all of a sudden, as it's playing and recording, the tape machine started to eat the tape. The room turned ice cold. Gentlemen, I had a visitor in that house, unwanted. I felt the cold breath on the back of my neck of the evil one. He was there. He came into our house, into our bedroom. And that tape started to eat, and I was frightened to death. And I grabbed the statue that Kathy had of the Virgin Mary, the little childhood statue, and the rosary that I had immediately gone out to buy the very first, after the first session with David. And I started praying Hail Marys like crazy. The room turned warm. The machine did no longer eat the tape. It recorded it. And I went in the next week to David, and I said, David, here's your tape back. It was fascinating. But I said, the strangest thing happened. He said, did your machine try and eat the tape? I said, absolutely. He said, it happens all the time. The evil one does not want that message heard. It was a recognition for me that while we now, me, believe in the goodness of God and God, I also have to recognize and understand that there is an evil force out there. There is an evil one. Satan is alive, and we don't have to look too far to see the news and the stuff that goes on and the drugs and all of the bad stuff that's going on. And he had a hold of me. I was playing for the wrong team. I was on his side, and he did not want to let go. And that fright, that first fear factor, that get a hold of him and show him, it didn't work because I was on the right path. I heard the call. I was directed in the right place. And the conversion of my heart changed quickly. So as I was going to my first game, and Jess and I started to repair things, and my first game that season was in Pittsburgh, opening of the regular season. Jessica had a field hockey game, great athlete. All three of the girls, the older girls, got Division I athletic scholarships, full rides. She was playing field hockey at Eastern High School around the corner from us. And I stopped by, and as the national anthem was playing, and Jess had her hand over her heart, and I stood behind the snow fence, and I said, Jess, come here. She looked, and she saw the ogre there, and she was a little hesitant. I said, no, come here, honey. I said, I just want to wish you the best of luck, and I want to tell you how much I love you. She teared. I teared. I said, I have to go to Pittsburgh. I have to leave tonight. Game's tomorrow, and I'm driving. Good luck. Have a great game. And as I drove, it was a bright blue sky and a bright sun on a long weekend with rush hour traffic. If anybody's driven in Philly, you get on the Schuylkill Expressway, and then you get on the Turnpike, and it was packed. Cars jammed. And I'm praying the rosary as I drive. I've got a rosary tape going, and the sun is on my driver's side window. And I looked out the window, and there was a white cloud all of a sudden appeared in the blue sky. And in it, had a sweep of dried red blood. And I went, wow, that's odd. Cloud disappeared. I drove along, prayed the rosary, looked, bang, cloud's back. This time, blood red sweep low, blood red sweep high. I went, wow, that's really strange. Cloud disappeared. Drive on, pray the rosary. All of a sudden, I looked, and the sun had a silver ring that was spinning faster and faster and faster. And then it started to gyrate in the sky. I'm going, whoa, what's going on here? It looked like it was going to crash into my window, like it was literally coming out of the sky at my car. It settled. I looked in the sun. I was looking in the sun. It was opaque. And in that sun, I saw a baby in a mother's womb. Very meaningful. I started to weep. I was praising God. I couldn't believe it. I thought the world was coming to an end. I had no idea what was taking place. And then I recognized I'm looking at the sun, and I'm in 3 lanes of bumper-to-bumper traffic. And as I looked to the road, I had at least 40 car-length space all around me. I was in my own space, this car. Bizarre. Absolutely bizarre. If anybody told me what I'm telling you, I'd think they were nuts. I lived it. I looked back, and then 2 hearts, perfectly shaped hearts. For those of us old enough, the I Love Lucy hearts off the TV show, boom, 3-dimensional. 1 lower, 1 connected above. And inside each heart was a beat. They beat in unison. Boom, boom, boom. And with each beat, it came out of the heart. I was crying. I was praising God for what he was revealing to me, his greatness, his love, his mercy. I saw these 2 hearts beating together. David told me after the first session, when I went in, he said, you have a good heart, and Jesus and his Blessed Mother are in the heart business. They want your heart. They revealed to me in that vision, that miracle of the sun, they showed me their hearts beating together. Phenomenal. But type A, Mr. Control Freak, that wasn't good enough for me, because as I drove, and this was lasted for 10 minutes or so, I saw a clearing at the side of the turnpike, and it said emergency truck pull over. And there was a clearing in the trees. I thought, oh, great, I'll just pull over, I'll stop, I'll take all this in. As I pulled off, the sun immediately went bright again. Now I've got the 40 car lengths closing on me. Back on the road. And then the most amazing peace settled in my heart. I let go. I said, Lord, I am so sorry. You are in control, not me. Thank you so much for this blessing that you just gave me. Immediately, the sun quickly spun back to the 2 hearts beating. And it lasted for another 10 to 15 minutes until I saw a sign that said, Rest Center, 1 mile. I knew in my heart that it was just about over at that point. And sure enough, just before the pull-off, the sun went bright, and I pulled in numb and called my wife. She was at the field hockey games. Nobody was home, and I left her the message. That was the first mystical event I had. But there were so many calls along the way that I hadn't been listening to. The Lord, in his wisdom, said, we got to shake this guy up. We got to really call him. I'm going to show him what he's been missing, what he hasn't seen. So in that call, it was for purpose. It wasn't just about my salvation. It wasn't just for me. I was used along the way for different good that he wanted. I became an instrument of his, as you all are. I was called and asked to save a man's life. And he was a former official that had fallen on hard times and was suing the NHL, and very difficult situation. And I approached the vice presidents of the NHL and I asked, can we do something? If I can get this lawsuit put away, can we help this man? Because he needs us. It's what Christ would do, and it's what Christ wanted, and Christ put him in that place for me me in that place to help. But you know what? As we know, where there's light, there is darkness. And the evil one was not happy with that. From 1995, I became a daily communicant. Not communicant, I attended daily Mass. It wasn't until 2001 when the marriage annulments and the very difficult process that both my wife Kathy and I had to go through allowed us, me, to be received into the church, the Holy Catholic Church. But you know what? Every day I went to Mass, wherever I was on the road, and I prayed, and as the host was consecrated, and at the point in the Mass where we would say then, Lord, I'm not worthy to receive you, but only say the word and I shall be healed. At that point, I prayed quietly. I said, Lord, I may never be worthy. That's your call. But would you, in your mercy, please just provide me with spiritual communion? Gentlemen, in my recall, in my swear to God, I felt his hand on my heart. He touched me. The tears that Kathy shed when she could not receive communion streamed down my cheeks every time. I knew that this truly was the precious body and blood of our Lord Jesus Christ in that Holy Communion, in that sacrament. It wasn't a symbol. It was him because he touched me with his hand, even though I could not receive. In 2001, September 2nd of 2001, I was received into the church in a special Mass, confirmed, First Holy Communion, done the whole thing, the confession in advance, and we felt the Holy Spirit. I wept. I should tell you that my father disowned me as I was in the process of becoming a Catholic. And through the annulment process, evil penetrated, and he sent me a letter, wrote me out of his will, and basically disowned me. On the day, at the moment that I was being received into the church, my father passed away on the sailboat that he built when I was a small boy. My brother and his family were on board, and Dad passed on a Sunday in the sun at the moment that I was received into the church. So when we came back from the Mass with friends and children that had attended, I received a call from my brother who told me that Dad had passed. Guess what time? 3 o'clock. My sadness at my dad's passing was instantly replaced with the knowledge and the faith that I have, that I was given as grace, to know that Dad had passage. Heaven was open for him, and it was about the mercy that I was given as accepted into the church, and Dad, as I pray for his soul constantly, but that he too had an opportunity that was availed to him through the mercy of Christ. Gentlemen, that call for me was dramatic. From the first communion, it's a daily trip, every day to Mass. I thirst for it. I don't even have to set an alarm. He wakes me up. And it's not because I'm great. It's because I'm so weak. It's because I needed him, and he recognized it, and I wasn't listening. If, as men, we can be real men of faith, we have the most beautiful reward waiting for us at the end. I now knew I wanted to play for the right team. I wanted to score goals for Christ and not the other guy. And boy, I'll tell you, was I playing. But every day's a challenge. This isn't just bliss constantly. We know that every day we're challenged, our faith is challenged, but we have to stick up, and we have to speak up, and we have to live our faith. And the last thing I'm going to share with you is, how can we make a difference? We often wonder if we ever make a difference. There was a player by the name of Theo Fleury, little wee guy. He was, as he wrote a book after he retired, he was a wreck as a player. He was always in your face. He was foul. He was vile. He was on drugs. He was an alcoholic. But as a 14-year-old boy, he was abused in Canada by his hockey coach, high-level hero hockey coach, a junior A coach in Canada, and there were several players that moved on that he abused. He was a predator. So Theo acted out his anger. He and I were always oil and water. In 1996, in a playoff game in Chicago, and this is from Theo Fleury's book, and I will tone it down, but he said, quote, "I'm going to effing kill you. I don't care who you effing think you are. Let's meet outside in the parking lot, you effing shitbag a-hole." Fraser immediately gave me a 10-minute misconduct, throwing me out of the game. It was too much. I took my helmet off, and I threw it at him. I remember it like it was yesterday. That helmet came off. It hit my skate. My leg started to twitch. Now, this is 96. 95 is when all this beautiful stuff started happening, and I was under attack in that game by Theo Fleury and whatever was influencing Theo, and I know who it was. I wanted to kick it back in his face. I took a breath. I got calm, and I threw him out of the game. Now, fast forward 4 years. Theo Fleury signs as a free agent with the New York Rangers for $8 million. They put him into the NHL substance abuse program right off the bat. His first game back, Madison Square Garden, St. Louis Blues, coached by Joel Quenneville, and they have a young player, second-year pro by the name of Tyson Nash, who's a trash-talking pain in the butt. At the end of the first period, Theo Fleury, this guy that hated my guts more than anybody in the world, came to me with tears rolling down his cheeks at the end of the first period, following a scrum that took place at the end zone in the Ranger zone. He said, "Kerry, I'm trying to clean up my life, honest." He said, "I haven't done coke in over a month. I haven't had anything to drink in over a month. I'm trying to clean up my life. Please don't let him talk to me like that." I said, "Who? What?" "Tyson Nash. This is what he said." I went, oh. Now, I had a choice, right? The same guy 4 years earlier said all these nasty things to me, and many times before that, I could have said, "Looks good on you." But you know, I probably should have. But the Holy Spirit took hold. And in that fraction of a second, I said, "Theo, if I can get Tyson Nash here at the start of the next period and get a sincere apology from him, will you accept it like a man?" He said, "I will." I said, "Now promise if I get him here, you won't break a stick over his head." He said, "I promise." I went right into the St. Louis coach's room. I told Joel Quenneville what the player had said to Theo Fleury. He rolled his eyes. He said, "Do you want me to tell him to take his stuff off?" He thought I was going to eject him from the game. I said, "No, what do you think about this apology?" Quickly, out comes Tyson Nash. I got Theo at the red line, right where the Rangers come onto the ice at Madison Square Garden. Flag him over. He's got his head down. His lip is quivering. He taps Theo on the shin pad. He said, "Theo, I'm really sorry." He said, "That was way below the line." And he said, "I just want to wish you all the best in everything you have ahead of you, and please accept my most sincere apology." Wow. I said, "You good with that, Theo?" He said, "Yeah, I'm good with that." They shook hands. I said, "Let's play." That was in 2000. 10 years later, I'm writing this book in the summer after my last game. I called Tyson Nash. I said, "Listen, Tyson, Kerry here. I want to share a story between us. Do you remember the night in Madison Square Garden with Theo Fleury?" The phone went dead quiet. He said, "Kerry, that was a career-changing situation. As a matter of fact, it was life-altering for me." I said, "Talk to me. Tell me more." In his own words, he told me that I put into the book. And he said, basically, that as a young player, he was pretty good, but to play in the NHL, he had to assume this role. He had to trash talk, and he had to do anything to try and draw penalties, because that was what was going to keep him in the NHL. That was the role he assumed. Until this one night, when he went below the line, and he thought of himself as really a nice guy, but he said it took Kerry Fraser, the referee playing dad, for me to recognize how far below the line I went. And he said, it wasn't just that I wounded the guy with a stick or my words. He said, I hurt his heart, and that was more than I could take. So, a simple handshake, a simple apology that was solicited, I never thought would have the kind of effect that it did on another individual. It certainly helped Theo, but it also helped Tyson Nash recognize, and as he said, it was life-altering situation just by apologizing for doing something that was inappropriate and below the line. So we can affect change. Richard talked about affecting change and starting now. It is here, today, that there may be change affected. And if today you hear his voice, harden not your hearts. I want to thank you for having me share my personal story, and I wish each one of you, as men, as Catholic men, that God will bless you with the grace to every day with your wives, your children, your grandchildren, the associates you have at work, that you will make the decisions in each one that you have to make that will put your Catholic faith first, and wear that on your sleeve. God bless you. Thank you so much.